YouTube, this is Vargas recording live from the Vargas Vault, and I wanted to record a Tales from the Vargas Vault. I just got finished recording a pros and cons about a subject that I don't think I've talked enough about in my channel, and that's wrestling. I already did a whole video about the pros and cons of wrestling, but I got into the mood. You know, I'm watching still the same DVD I was watching. This is the history of the World Wrestling Championship. And right now they're showcasing the explosion of the Mega Powers, which is Macho Man, the champion, the heel champion, because he went heel, against Hulk Hogan. And that was a really good match too. Now, but I want to talk about my favorite wrestlers in all the time that I've seen. There's Miss Elizabeth. If you don't know who Miss Elizabeth is, she was the manager of Macho Man, and a very, very pretty woman. A really very pretty woman that unfortunately has passed away. Macho Man has also passed away, unfortunately. A lot of great wrestlers have no longer here, and that kind of bugged me out. So, for this tale for the Vargas Vault, I wanted to share with you my favorite wrestlers of all time. I was thinking of doing a top 10, but you know, I like all these wrestlers equally, so I can't really put them on in any number. So I am going to do my favorite wrestlers as a Tales from the Vargas Vault overall. Now, the first one I want to talk about, appropriately enough, is right there, the Macho Man. Ooh yeah! He was really cool. He was really cool. He was a really awesome technical wrestler. Hulk Hogan was the face of the WWE because he was the big guy. He was the big guy that defeated and had rivalries with Roddy Piper, Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, King Kong Bundy, Ted DiBiase. You know, he was the selling point for WWF back in the day. You know, everyone had their Hulkamania shirts, and you know, they said their prayers and ate their vitamins. But Macho Man was a smaller guy, but he was very flashy, very high flying, and that contrasted a lot with Hogan's style. But Macho Man had a whole bunch of really cool matches. The one that he had with Superfly Jimmy... No, it's not Superfly, I'm sorry. The Dragon Steamboat. That match was really cool for I believe it was the Intercontinental Championship. This one, where the Mega Powers explode. The Mega Powers was a tag team of Hulk Hogan and Macho Man, but after Macho Man won a tournament and he became the world champion, he turned heel. So he turned evil, but he gave good matches, and he was really consistent in his good work. He was really cool. Then he went on to commentary, and he always was really cool. His promos were really cool. If you can, I know it's in YouTube, but if you can search for the promo of Macho Man with a creamer, a coffee creamer, and he was Mean Gene Okerlund was interviewing him, and he's like, "I'm like the coffee creamer, Mean Gene, 'cause the cream always rises to the top." That's really cool. He cut some amazing promos, and promo is a wrestling term for, you know, him talking about a match or his victory or whatever. And he had a really cool style. And again, he was a smaller guy, but he was really built. But in contrast, he was kind of small compared to Hogan. But he was really cool, really good wrestler. He was in the first Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire. He was Bonesaw. So he was still very relevant. And of course, you can't forget the Macho Man and the Slim Jim commercials. Step into a Slim Jim. He was great in those. So the Macho Man was a really good wrestler. And yeah, during the 80s, he was really awesome. The other one I'm going to talk about is the one that I'm honoring with my beautiful silver mask, and that is El Santo, El Enmascarado de Plata. Like I mentioned in my previous pros and cons video, El Santo was a masked luchador that he was a legendary luchador, and he was a technical wrestler, so he was a face. and he was always a face. I don't remember a single time where El Santo ever turned heel. He was always face. His son also, his El Hijo del Santo, also has always been face. I've never seen El Santo ever be heel, and that's very rare for a wrestler that he's been face throughout his whole career. But I liked watching him wrestling. He wasn't too much of a high flyer. He was more of a technical guy, a more submission guy. But the thing I remember most fondly about El Santo is that his movies. Like I briefly mentioned, El Santo was a jack of all trades in his movie. He was either a vigilante like Batman, and he had a whole bunch of stuff, or he was like James Bond, and he had a whole bunch of gadgets, or he would go off and fight against vampire women, or mummies, or zombies. Sometimes Blue Demon was his rival. Sometimes they would team up to fight a bigger threat. But I clearly remember in my mind that I got into El Santo movies, and I remember as I've gotten older, my memory has gotten kind of cloudy, and I've mixed up things here and there. But I clearly remember that I was in kindergarten, and they had this TV, and they broke the news that El Santo died. And again, my little child brain was like, how could he have died? I just saw him in a movie. I was a kid, I thought kid things, but it bummed me out. It bummed me out that El Santo had died, and because I thought he wasn't going to make any movies, and but they still kept passing his movies, of course. But it's the first clear thing I remember of someone that I watched dying, and that kind of left an impression on me. But El Santo just had they're really cheesy movies. They were done during the 60s and the 70s, but that's the kind of stuff I like. I grew up with that, so it's my kind of movie. But El Santo and his movies are really entertaining to me. A lot of people might not agree. They might see them as really low budget C grade movies, but to me, El Santo movies are always cool, and I always enjoy El Santo. The other wrestler that I enjoy a lot is the Hulkster, the Hulkamaniac, Hulk Hogan. Forgetting what happened in his later years, that he left WWE, went to WCW, came back to WWE, left, had his reality show, then briefly came back, then left, and then got into a big old mess because he did some racial commentaries and pretty much killed his career. Putting that aside, I grew up with Hulk Hogan. I was a Hulkamaniac when I was a kid. I marked out like crazy when Hulk Hogan returned and fought The Rock in that WrestleMania. I was like, holy shit, The Rock versus Hogan. I totally marked out, and I was super hyped because of that, because I saw Hulk Hogan coming back to his home in WWE and having another run of awesome fights, and I was like super cool. But of course, as I mentioned in the previous video, I started watching wrestling when they were announcing and promoting WrestleMania, so I watched that thing. Then WrestleMania 2, then WrestleMania 3 when he did the Andre the Giant thing, then this one where he fought Macho Man, and of course I have to mention the epic handshake. If you thought the handshake between Schwarzenegger and Carl Weathers in Predator was epic, the handshake of the Mega Powers, Hulk Hogan and Macho Man shaking hands like, they're awesome, that was too hard to contain, and then they shook hands, legendary. Then he also had a really awesome fight against the Ultimate Warrior. I think it was in WrestleMania 6. So a lot of really awesome, cool. And of course, when I see the Winged Eagle belt, I think of Hulk Hogan. And a lot of champions held this. But I always, when I see this belt, I think of Hulk Hogan. And yeah, this is my favorite belt ever. So yeah, I was a Hulkamaniac. I wouldn't say I said my prayers all the time, but I did eat my vitamins, and I was like, I would hulk up and show the 24-inch pythons and the whole spiel, and I remember I got worried when he would fight the Undertaker, because the Undertaker was this unstoppable force, and it was really cool to follow, Hulk Hogan. I even watched his movies, because he did dab into making movies. I watched Suburban Commando, No Holds Barred. He did a nanny movie. That one wasn't so good. I watched Thunder in Paradise. So I have followed Hogan throughout his career, because he was such an iconic wrestler that I enjoy. Then, of course, the other wrestler I want to talk about is the Phenom himself, The Undertaker. Now, I like the gimmick of The Undertaker, that he's, this zombie thing that goes around wrestling, and you can't stop him, you can't kill him. He would just come in and butcher you and bury you alive, and had supernatural powers. My brother, the brother that follows me, of course, he was a bigger mark for The Undertaker. Like I said, I was a Hulkamaniac, but even then I was taken aback by how amazing The Undertaker was. And he's had the longest career in WWE. Of course, he had the WrestleMania streak, where he was undefeated in WrestleMania until he fought Brock Lesnar, and he broke the streak. And last WrestleMania, he fought Roman Reigns, and he got retired. But The Undertaker was just impressive. He was a tall guy, and he had the greatest gimmick of any wrestler. He was this dead man that would just come at you, play psychological mind games with you, and then just mess you up, and then beat you and bury you alive in a casket match or stuff like that. So The Undertaker is really cool. The other one of my favorite wrestlers is a Blue Demon. He's the wrestling luchador mask that I had before. I always felt that was a very interesting contrast between the silver of Santo and the blue of Blue Demon. I thought it was really cool, and those are the two masks that I love the most: Santo and Blue Demon. And Blue Demon, he was your tweener. He was he could be a face, or he could be a heel. And sometimes he would help El Santo, sometimes he would be his rival, and sometimes he would be a really awesome hero, or sometimes he would be a really dastardly villain. But the look of Blue Demon is iconic. Santo and Blue Demon are icons in luchador wrestling, and I always liked seeing them together. I loved seeing them fighting together, because it's like Goku and Vegeta. They would just play off each other. But I also like seeing them fight, because they had these two equally matched rivals fighting against each other, and to a standstill. So the Blue Demon was amazing. Current wrestlers, I respect Kurt Angle a lot. When he debuted, he had a really whiny kind of character, but he always delivered amazing matches. Kurt Angle, oh my God, he did amazing matches. The Olympic hero Kurt Angle with the "You suck, you suck, you suck." But his ankle lock was devastating. Whenever he got someone locked into the ankle lock, forget it. Few people could kick out of the ankle lock. Another wrestler that I really enjoyed, unfortunately, his memory right now is very, very tainted because of the way that he died, which I won't mention. But Chris Benoit was a really, really cool wrestler. He was very technical in his moves. He had a very interesting mix of technical and high flying. So he gave amazing matches with Kurt Angle, with Chris Jericho. Just an amazing wrestler that, unfortunately, because of the way that he died, he will never be mentioned in WWE ever again, and that sucks. Another wrestler that I enjoyed a lot, is John Cena. John Cena gets a lot of hate because he's the face of WWE, and for many years WWE would just post his face in everything, and he would always win for the most part. And but honestly, he has given good matches. His character is cool. The guy is built like a beast. I mean, his strength is amazing. I remember when I saw him F5 the Big Show, not F5, the FU, or the Attitude Adjustment to the Big Show. I was like, holy shit! John Cena just FU'd the Big Show. Really, just blew my mind seeing someone the size of John Cena lift someone the size of the Big Show. And then he did the same to the Great Khali, and I'm like, this guy's a monster. And he has given good matches. He started off as a heel, but then he went face, and he's never gone back. So I really like seeing John Cena. Except when he would fight for like the 20th time against Edge or Randy Orton. But for the most part, I've enjoyed John Cena's career quite a bit. Another wrestler that I like watching right now is Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch, unfortunately, she has a problem that she's underused. WWE hasn't been able to figure out what to do with her. But Becky Lynch is very athletic. And I like her costume and everything. Really, really cool. I also really enjoyed watching anything with Lita. Lita was with the Hardys, and she was one of the few women wrestlers that, except China, that would go toe-to-toe with the guys and do hurricanranas and stuff like that. And her rivalry with Trish Stratus was legendary. But she did these whole crazy, amazing things. So Lita is another wrestler that I like a lot, and I call them wrestlers. I don't like the term. I've never liked the term divas. So they're wrestlers, because if they do the same things that the men do, and Lita and Becky Lynch have, then they're a wrestler. They're not a diva. They're not eye candy. They're wrestlers, and I like that a lot. Who else? You'd be surprised that I was never a big fan of the Ultimate Warrior. I liked the character, but Ultimate Warrior was never really my thing. I don't know. He just seemed weird, too over the top to me. So Ultimate Warrior, no. Same thing with Randy Orton. I respect the guy, but I don't know. There's something about him that just I don't really enjoy that much. Another guy that I did like a lot was Edge, the rated R superstar. He was a heel. He was a really good heel. I mean, he wasn't your chicken shit heel that he would like run away whenever shit would happen. When he had to fight, he would deliver. If he could escape the having to wrestle, he would. But he was effective, because you actually hated him as a heel. He really got in. He got you to hate the guy when he was a heel, and when he was face, you would cheer for him. But that was pretty cool. Well, so I had someone else at the top of my head right now, but I forgot. I just had him in. I was talking about Edge. Yeah, I didn't follow WCW that much, so I was never big into Sting or Goldberg. I've mostly been a luchador or a WWE fan. In current talent, they just haven't had anyone that's popped out. I mean, they have good talent going with them, but I don't know. There's just not. There's no one. Oh, I remember who I was going to talk about. I was going to talk about Jake the Snake. Jake the Snake Roberts was also really cool. He was a heel. There was a brief time where he was a face, but he was a really cool heel during his days. And the thing I remember most about Jake the Snake Roberts is that he will always carry a giant snake in his bag. And I remember a really cool match where he had this gimmick with the Andre the Giant. It turned out that Andre the Giant was afraid of snakes, and Jake the Snake would haunt him with Damien. I think it was Damien, his snake. And I remember very clearly that Andre the Giant got fed up with that kind of stuff, and then he grabbed the burlap sack where the snake was, and then just squished it. He was sick of Jake the Snake just taunting him, and then he just grabbed the burlap snap and just squished it. And I remember Jake the Snake afterwards. He opened the bag and he's just like, "Oh my god, Oh my god, no. But Jake the Snake was really cool, and he went through some really bad times because later on I did find out that he got really bad into alcohol and drugs, and Diamond Dallas Page actually got him into rehab and fixed his life and saved him pretty much, because the Jake the Snake was a lot, on express lane to dying because he was out of shape and in a really bad spot, and Diamond Dallas Page saved him, got him into rehab, got him fixed up. But Jake the Snake Roberts was cool. He was a good heel. Now people might remember him, but he was really cool. He was a nice heel. He had rivalries with Macho Man and the Undertaker and the Ultimate Warrior. But he was a really, really cool heel. Another cool heel, Roddy Piper. I can't believe I almost forgot about Roddy Piper. Piper, of course. He started WrestleMania with Hogan, and he also dabbed into movies with one of his greatest movies of all time, They Live. I came to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum, which is one of the greatest one-liners. So much so that Duke Nukem actually stole that one-liner. And Roddy Piper was also really cool, a really good heel. You also hated the guy because he was cocky. He was, he really he was a good actor and a good worker in his promos that you got him to actually hate the guy. But Roddy Piper was so good. But yeah, I know I'm forgetting someone else in the back of my... Oh, Mr. Perfect! That's another guy. Mr. Perfect. Mr. Perfect was also... For the most part, I remember him mostly as a heel, but I remember his promos that, he would always hit a home run and always throw a hole-in-one and always, from far away score a three-point shot, and Hogan just beat Macho Man for the title. And Mr. Perfect was really cool. I remember he came back recently in a Rumble, and he lasted a good chunk of the Rumble. I was like, wow. Props to not using him as a joke and actually having him do something in the Rumble. Unfortunately, Mr. Perfect also has passed away, but Mr. Perfect was really cool. He was really underrated. A lot of people don't know Mr. Perfect, and I would hope that they would do I think they might have, but I'm not 100% sure. They might have done a commemorative DVD on him, because I would buy that one for sure. The other one, of course, that I almost forgot was Bret Hart. Again, more of a Hulkamaniac, Macho Man. Bret Hart I remember him mostly in his tag team, but when he was in the Hart Foundation, but that's my cell phone. But Macho Man Bret Hart was really a really cool technical wrestler. Even as a heel, he always brought his A game. So yeah, that was really cool. But yeah, those are definitely my favorite wrestlers throughout the time that I've watched wrestling. Whenever I get nostalgic, I pop in one of the DVDs that I own. Another one, Eddie Guerrero. I almost forgot Eddie Guerrero. The great Latino Heat. He also gave some really good matches, and unfortunately also has passed away. But Latino Heat, I'm actually looking for that DVD. They did release 2 documentary DVDs for Latino Heat, and I need to get them because Latino Heat, he did some really cool matches. But yeah, I just wanted to share with you this Tales from the Vargas Vault, because people are looking for me, so I'm going to sign off. But I just wanted to share with you some memories of my favorite wrestlers, both in Luchador and in WWE. But some really, really good moments. So yeah, I'm going to sign out because someone's looking for me. So until I see you all again, this is Vargas, thanking you and signing out.